Subcommittee meeting to order. And the first thing on the agenda is pledge allegiance to the flag. And Representative Petrie will start us off with pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We remain standing for a moment of silence. Next item on the agenda is roll. Who's here? Representative Bay. Representative Bay. Representative Cannon. Here. Representative Bonner. Here. Representative Harrington. Here. Representative Hogan. Here. Representative Howard. I'm sorry, I just want to go back. Representative Bay was excused. Representative Finney. Representative Finney. Representative Petrie.
Here.
Representative Smith. Representative Smith. And
Don't forget yourself.
yeah, I said that in the beginning. Me, yes, I did. Once again, Representative Howard's on here. Finally, on the agenda is going to be the county attorney's office. Anyway.
If I can just mention something, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Congratulations, congratulations, family, on having a baby within the last 10 days.
So sorry I missed the meeting last week.
A healthy, handsome baby boy.
That's great.
I got pictures. I think it was the day of labor.
Yeah, I think it was too, but
That's great.
But she was,
Congratulations.
thank you.
and she came out of her way today to come off maternity leave to come in and do her presentation.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
Saw the pictures and it was, he's a beautiful baby boy.
He's a big boy.
It's great.
Yeah,
How big?
He's close to about 9 pounds at this point.
Oh, that's.
Yes, that's the one that didn't have to give birth to him, right? Well, thank you. So obviously we've included the budget in your materials. I'm happy to answer any questions. I think the biggest change you'll see is that we have dissolved the DV unit and merged it with the county attorney budget. And overall, there is a savings to the county once that budget has been merged. We decided, the reason for that, the Family Justice Center is now closed. And it didn't make sense to have two separate budgets for that. We continue to do all the work with the domestic violence unit that we always have, prosecuting misdemeanor domestic violence cases for the county, which allows us to kind of give some reprieve to the local police departments that otherwise prosecute their own cases, but domestic violence being some of the more complicated and difficult ones to prosecute. That's why we continue to have our office as a group of lawyers rather than police officers taking those cases on. We also have victim assistance coordinators that help out with those kinds of cases, whereas police departments don't often have those resources that we have. So we'll continue to do that work for the police departments, but we just merged that into our overall budget for the county attorney's office. I also have Kate Emerson here from the Child Advocacy Center. She has done the Child Advocacy Center budget. So if you have questions about that specific budget, they can be deferred to her, but I'm happy to answer any specific questions anyone has. Yes, sir.
I know you don't, well, you realize you don't say this very often. Are the raises enough? I mean, I looked at this, the problem we've been having now for years is this open rotating. You bring people in, you train them, they go someplace else. Bring people in, train them, they go someplace else. Is it time to start looking at salaries and say that we need to increase them more so people will stay in the long run? That's going to be cheap.
I appreciate that comment, Representative Carrington. In drafting this budget, I tried to look at competitive rates around the county, around the state. And I think I went a little lower than what they are, in hopes that I didn't want to ask for too much in my very first budget proposal. I agree, though. I think that the attorneys here are underpaid, and I think that adds a big reason to why people don't stay. I do think that we have a really great reputation in office, especially under the former county attorney, that I'm hoping to continue, but there is a lot of loyalty with their employees here, whereas there are several attorneys that could very well lead to making money in other places, but they enjoy working here. So I was trying to aim for salary that would, I guess, encourage them not to leave, maybe not match other counties, but encourage them not to leave. But I would be thrilled if we could go even higher, to be honest with you. And I think that that would go a long way with retaining people.
But my point is that it's really not spending more money, it's just spending money smarter, because over a 4 or 5 year period, it's not talking more, because it's just the efficiency of bringing someone in. It's going to take them like 4 or 5 months just to get up to speed. And so that means somebody else is going to be doing extra work, and the person that's continuing to do work is going to say, I got enough of this, I'm leaving.
That's exactly right. And I would say 4 to 5 months, it might take you to get up to speed to learn the basic cases. I'd say it takes more like 4 to 5 years to get acclimated to the difficult sex assault, negligent homicide cases, to be an actually very high functioning trial attorney in those more difficult cases. We need to have people retained for more like 4 to 5 years.
So biggest budget hots here. I consider looking at giving raises, making the salaries more competitive, because in the long run it's going to save us money.
Our more experienced attorney, Jock Barth, he makes a decent salary. That's why I didn't include him in the budget. But it's the middle level attorneys that have been there in the 2 to 3 range that I was trying to bring up, because I want them to stay for that. I want them to stay closer to 10 years, rather than be leaving at the 4 to 5 mark, which is what we've seen so far. And I did put in, the attorneys that had left recently to go to other high paying jobs, which is difficult. And right now hiring, as I also put in there, we have to bring people in higher, because the job market is so competitive, right? And so if you've been here for 3 years and you see somebody making more than you that's just got hired and is brand new to law, certainly maybe negates any sort of loyalty you have towards the office. So
Ray's dying to say something.
yeah,
I just wanted to say that since the county attorney had submitted her budget, I have found some additional revenue courtesy of the sheriff's department that we could add in and bring the salaries up to what Emily had suggested without impacting the tax rate. So if you wanted to do that, I've estimated it at $32,000. You want to add the 32,000. I will tell you that when I go in front of the revenue subcommittee, I will add that into the revenue so it won't impact the tax rate. And the reason, since we have a new acting sheriff, there's been a refocus on items that produce some revenue for the county. Of course, I start the budget in October, and I don't see the benefit of that until January, when the year closes. So I started with what I thought was reasonable revenues. As it turns out, the revenues I projected were less than what they had earned by the end of last year. So I can add some revenues in to cover the $32,000 that Emily is recommending be distributed amongst the attorneys.
So is that a motion by you?
Sure, I'll make that motion.
Is that a second?
I'll second.
Second, by to, have Ray move with the additional money from the sheriff's.
Right, and Emily and I have worked that out together. And I promise you that, I will bring that up to the revenue committee when they meet next Friday.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Was there any other questions?
Other trick too? Any more questions?
Okay, no further questions. Thank you for the report. We appreciate
Thank you
that.
for coming in.
Thank you so very much. Next one here from the sheriff's office, dispatch. He's sitting over there. David Cognito, how you doing? Good, sir. David Cognito. Good to see you.
Okay, I'll start for the sheriff's office. As you know, we've had very rough year over the past year and problems with improprieties and which were all taken care of by the Attorney General's office, and then other improprieties too that we had to also take care of ourselves, the personnel matters. That's pretty much all taken care of now. The problem employees associated with the former sheriff no longer are employed with the sheriff's office. So we can move forward from there. Ray Barr has been instrumental in helping us through this crisis since last summer and even beyond that, to get our budget up to where it's supposed to be so that we can continue on with the work that all the deputies and support staff do in the office. So the budget for this year was basically built off of that last year's budget. We didn't add anything. That's kind of status quo. We got vehicles last year. The vans were critical because pretty much all over New England with those transportations. So we were able to replace 3 of those. Also replace some of our SUV vehicles that use transportation and civil process. So we were in pretty good shape there. So we didn't ask for anything for this year. One of the one change here is the telephone line was combined with the dispatch telephone line, which made sense to bring all the telephone issues under one line. We have cell phones, people call, so a lot of the deputies have county cell phones that are with them basically 24/7, including myself. We're all pretty much available when we have to be, even though a lot of us aren't specifically on call or paid to be on call. We do pay certain deputies to be on call, and they have no choice but to answer the phone to respond within an hour. That's because of our federal partners and our local partners as well. An inmate goes into the hospital, we have to have a deputy accompanying. It has to be 2 deputies in most cases, particularly with the federal. Other than that, like I said, there was nothing big added on. It's pretty much status quo, so I'd be happy to answer any questions. It's between the 2 budgets combined, it's over $5 million. So if there's anything specific, I can't answer it. Steve Burke's here. He's been instrumental in keeping us afloat through this crisis and into this year. And all the crisis pretty much over. And I don't blame anything on that as we go forward. Taking ownership for the budget and everything we do. We do have a lot of great people working for the sheriff's office. Quite honestly, Steve and I came close to even leaving the sheriff's office a couple of different times, but we didn't because of the mission here and a lot of good people that have 5-10 years to go on the system. And it's really been unbelievable to me that we've been able to retain those people, and we have. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Justin too. He's been instrumental on the dispatch, EMD side, been great. So happy to answer any questions. If I don't have the answer, get it.
Any questions?
I just have a quick comment and overview. Besides the additional revenue, subsequently, there is built in almost $200,000 in additional revenue, primarily related to transports. You notice that
particularly with ice, they're working with a second crew for ice. They reimburse us for the transports, but the nice part is it ends up at the jail. And you'll notice there's a $500,000 increase in revenue at the jail. And that couldn't happen without the willingness of the sheriff's department to do the transports. So it kind of is a hand in glove situation. So the officers that perhaps were working at Frisbee now make up the second transport unit for the ICE, primarily ICE, and sometimes the U.S. Marshal transports. But that extra revenue is reflected in the revenue section of the budget. And the second thing is, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't say that the county's investment on behalf of the towns, for the sake of close to, where's Justin? What was the total cost, Justin, on the radio system?
Sure.
So the county has funded the revamp of the entire radio system. And as you know, we dispatch primarily for all the cities, all the towns in Stratford County. But what was happening is we had a deficit of, what was our percentage before we did the radio system?
Around 35.
And which means that 65% of the locations in the county, you couldn't be sure that if you used your portable radio, it was gonna work. So now we're at what? We're at 99.7% with the new radio system. And so now when an officer stops a vehicle and needs to use their portable radio, 99.7% of the land of the county. And the cities do get a benefit from it. We are the backup system. We've become also the backup system should they have a failure. So it's not, I mean, it's primarily to the advantage of the towns because we do the direct dispatch. But, and that was totally county funded, using some ARPA funds as well as $750,000. Is that right, Diane? Earmark, a congressional earmark of money through Congressman Pappas. And the allowance of the executive committee of this delegation to defer some capital money that we had set aside for closing in the center of Riverside, which we couldn't do because of the asbestos. The executive committee a couple of years ago diverted some $725,000. So all of those combinations of funding gave us the $4.5 million that we needed to complete the radio system.
So just add one thing that, boy, that really increases the safety of the officer using those radios. So, be it whatever, if it could be police or fire or whoever the dispatch. It's really great.
Yeah, they did and I have to tell you, it's primarily in the back of poor Justin and Major Burke to get this stuff together. And they just did a fantastic job. So you will see in the dispatch a couple of operational additional things that we needed to put in there in order to keep this new radio system up and running.
Next, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the questions I had was what is the total revenue for the ICE contract? That's the first question I have.
Chris, can you tell us what your estimated revenue is for ICE?
I have estimated revenue. So our estimated revenue this year is approximately, turn to my notes here. It is approximately $8.1 million. So it's all calculated with all of our federal partners. They're all charged at the same day rate. So I'm looking to make that much money. I don't care if it's ICE, if it's U.S. Markets from Maine, Vermont, or Massachusetts, or New Hampshire, but it's $8.1 million. And that's actually an increase of about $685,000 from last year. I'm happy to report that I've been able to actively recruit to have additional people come in. And so one of the things that you'll hear at the end of this presentation when I come up is that I anticipate that a lot of my increase in costs are going to be offset by revenue generated. And honestly, that, just to kind of highlight the point about the glove, the hand in the glove, I can't do that without the assistance from the sheriff's department. I worked really closely with these two gentlemen to kind of realign what our mission has been and what we've been so successful at. They're 100% on board. I've conveyed that information to the United States Marshal Service and Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and they're nothing but pleased with that. But 8.1 million is our anticipated revenue for 2020.
So,
And then about 60 of those bodies would be ICE, but it's actually gonna be more than 60.
I'm at 72 this morning, and I anticipate that by the end of the week, next week, I'll be at 96.
And what's the net cost? Or net-
$70.42 is our cost. Now, if we didn't board
net- What's
inmates,
the total?
uh,
So net revenue.
net revenue, I just need to do it in my head,
Right.
so it'll take me a minute. It's 56, about $2.5 million net. But that's a little unfair because we would still need, when we estimate the cost, we depreciate the building. It counts electricity and heating for the entire building. So yes, if we didn't have the boarders, we wouldn't need all of the staff, but we would still need to heat the building. We would still need to pay for the building because it's already built. So, I would say it's closer to $5 million net revenue. Because the only thing we'd be eliminating is some staff members. We wouldn't, everything else is built. You need to keep the lights on and you need to keep the building heated. So that's in the calculation of the $70.42. And I'm positive of that number because I just looked it up yesterday. Because it was a question that came out of the subcommittee, at the budget hearing. So I just looked the number up yesterday and we used the audit, last audit, the 22 audit to come up with the number. So, I would say it's more like 5 million net.
Got one. You mentioned you got new cruisers. How much of that was ARPA money? And if you didn't buy them with ARPA,
that was in last year's budget, so it wasn't involved in the actual budgeting of that, so that would have been in 23. 22. So purchased off of that. Some of that carried over because of COVID. There was a real shortage of vehicles, transport vans. We waited for years, so it had to be carried over from previous years. Same thing with the cruisers. They're very hard to get, so we ran basically some of our cruisers vans just a bit. And then we finally were able to get those last spring.
so the question is, did we buy any vehicle? I know with buses at the local level, and we bought extra buses because we could get them, which is helps fleet.
And maybe Ray can answer that better.
Two vehicles. Two of the vehicles that we got, we bought.
Okay, thank you.
First, they use a radio. That's fantastic. I'm gonna guess that a lot of those places with radio, some, they still a lot of so, I want to thank you for extremely trying. Everything else I can think is bad. So, but now I gotta ask you some questions.
Sure.
I'm looking at the overtime. This year, you went over 62,000, pretty good, high percentage over the 275 that's appropriated, and you asked me for 350,000. So you asked me for 22% more. That represents, overtime represents 29% of the deputies' total salaries for deputies. Isn't it time we're seeing this constant amount of huge overtime, except putting on hiring more? I mean, I don't want to say that what happened in Concord, and he's working overtime, but he could, I don't know. All I'm saying is, with that level of overtime, opening up ourselves, if something bad happens, either to sheriff or deputy, to a prisoner, then there's lawsuits, and isn't it time, this amount of overtime?
Well, sir, yes, I'll answer those questions. A good part of our overtime is in hospitalizations of inmates, which is totally unpredictable. So we could have, say, 3 in a year, which is very unlikely. And we could get back to you and say, we were way under. Or we could have quite a few of them, like every other week. Sometimes we've got 2 or 3 in the hospital at a time. The problem is most of these inmates, when they're taken into custody, they've never been to a doctor for the past 10, 20 years. They come in with all kinds of acute problems and issues, and I'm sure Superintendent Brackett can elaborate much more on that. But they come in not as healthy as you or I. If we have a problem, we go to the doctor or the dentist. They don't. But once they're incarcerated, then the problems manifest themselves, and all of a sudden they have to go to the doctors, the dentists, going up with serious issues to the hospital, infections, sometimes about to lose a limb, but there's no way we can predict it. So for us to have that, so to speak, is probably unreasonable too. A lot of that, on top of that, is reimbursable to us. It's a U.S. Marshals prisoner, it's immigration, whatever they pay the county back, so that comes back in revenue.
I understand, but you certainly wouldn't want to budget what doing that all on regular staff salary.
Right.
But if we have continuously year after year, this much higher overtime, then maybe it's time to look at, let's address some of that by adding staff rather than making it all on overtime. That's a pretty, take the total amount of deputy salaries, the overtime is in the second bracket is almost 30%. So, I mean, I'm just suggesting maybe it's time to say, let's see if we can knock that down to 20%.
Let's say like you added like 5 or 10 deputies, then we have a spell of a month with nobody in the hospital. We have to have work for them coming into the county with revenue to offset what their cost was, or it would be an increase in cost. So it ebbs and flows so much that we rely pretty much on the per diem staff, a lot of this work. We have probably more per diem deputies than we do full-time deputies. The beauty of per diem.
So when you say per diem, then you're talking overtime, you're talking just outside of the salary.
The only time we use per diem is when we need them. That's the only time they get paid. They don't get any benefits.
40 hours a week as a deputy and that was my concern. Okay, that is my question. Okay.
Do you have another question?
Nope.
Any other further questions? No further questions, thank you, gentlemen. Additional housing.
Scott, you want to come on?
Okay, Scott Hampton, and I'm coordinator of the Supervised Visitation Program. Briefly, our history, we've had a nice ride for about 10 years with the federal government putting the bill for all the activities. And we have, as of August 31 of this year, we've squeezed that rock dry. So one of the ways we've been able to do that is we kept salaries pretty low, and so we had actually a succession of 3 grants. And this 3rd grant was a 3-year grant, and we are just this year going to finish the 5th year of that 3-year grant. So we are fully funded up and through the end of August, and then it'll be just the last. We're not giving up on the idea of external funding, external meeting outside of the county. Working on back to is having state money. As some of you may know, visitation center in Stratford County in New Hampshire, and several years ago we had state money put into the budget for 3 different things, for expand ours, and then money to 2 other centers. And then at the last last minute, the governor said it needed to be the HHS budget measure 20 million in any new program. Those got wiped off. This year is not the funding cycle, will be next year, so that is on our list. Potential funding sources. The end of this year, so everything except for the last 4 months, a couple things will drop off of the budget. The mandatory training that we had for federal funders is going away, as for the it's listed as fees and outside services. We were involved in developing a training project with New Hampshire Legal Assistance and Crisis Center, and that project will be done by the end of August. So fees and outside services. So those are the changes. Questions, clarifications?
Any questions? Any questions? Okay, thank you.
So the 6102 Community Corrections, my name is Carrie Conway, and I coordinate criminal justice programs for the county. I brought with me today Will Britton, who is one of our directors, and he oversees our employability program and also our community service programs. So if you look at our budget today, our budget incorporates our pre-trial, our post-trial programs, and our employability program. I wanted Will to take a few minutes to highlight the employability program, which is unique to New Hampshire. So
it's yeah, I think it's just a program that we supervise people to get child support. So they last year we collected almost $100,000 just to our office, and that doesn't count people who are out there and their wages have been garnished straight to the mothers and fathers. So that number would be even bigger. So I supervise about 80 clients. They report to me. I make sure that they are looking for employment, keeping them accountable. They're searching job searches. I give them places to go to look for employment. And we have court hearings periodically to make sure that they're in compliance with our program. And then either through over Rochester Family or Dover Family, the judges give them stipulations that they have to follow. And if they don't, then we address that in court. But overall, it's been a very successful program.
and this is an idea born out of, noticing that people were being arrested for not paying child support because they were sitting in Chris's space across the street. You thought, well, how are we going to get money to the families? So Will is very modest, but he's collected over the years almost $1 million in child support. And very proud of him.
If I could just say that when I first got here 8 years ago, these programs were being started off, maybe more than that, and they actually were like state of the art. They actually were the first in New Hampshire. So Stratford County really has a lot of firsts. Thank you so very much. And I didn't continue.
So community corrections, today we're supervising in all of our programs together 541 individuals. We have 359 of those are on our bail supervision programs. And if you notice, our budget's actually down a little bit this year. Any specific questions? I could talk all day about.
The only other thing I wanted to mention is that a couple years ago, 2 years ago now, we did an analysis of people that were out on pretrial supervision. And we estimated that at least 3/4 of those people would be incarcerated if we didn't have the community monitoring. So that would have added all of those people to the House of Correction, which would have meant we couldn't have generated any money in the 8 million that we generate in revenue. We couldn't generate any money. And as distressing as this would be for all of us, we'd probably be talking about a jail expansion. If we added, those 300 and, or a good portion of those I got it last Monday. Every Monday I get a report about how many people are being monitored. And it was 555 as of Monday of this week. And obviously that number varies day by day. But I mean, if 3/4 of those were in our jail, we'd be close to maxed out. So, the program and the cost for maintaining someone in this program, the total cost is about $10 a day, as opposed to the $70.42 that it costs for their incarceration. And, they don't need to be, 24-hour supervised. They pay for their own medications. They're on some form of health insurance that program encourages them to sign up for things that are available to them. And the program also ensures that they get proper medical care, proper psychological care, when those things would otherwise be the responsibility of the jail to do. So it's a huge cost savings to the county in those respects. Besides the fact it's successful as all get out.
Yeah, I did notice both budgets went down in inflation. Is that just because it's less people in programs now? When it comes to increases when
No, we were able to cut down a few of the lines. We're at like office supplies, fees outside services. We partner with the state for drug court. That's a different budget, but we're able to pay for some of those services out of the state budget. Collaborate with, like, a mental health line.
And everything's zero based. So if there's a new person that comes on and because another person is left, they'd be brought in at a lower salary. So we zero base all those salaries.
Any other questions?
I have a comment. I just want to thank you. I just want to see you too. And actually, kind of feed right in. Farming is one of Farmington's favorite daughters, and she does a fantastic job.
Thanks, sir. Good to see you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you for your presentation.
6105 drug court, the next up. If you notice, our budget of just over $650,000, the state, we get funds through the state for $562,900 from that. So county's portion of that is minimal. We averaged about 73 people. We were in 2009 when we started. We have a new judge, Judge Howard, who's been our presiding judge, is now taken over Judge Nando's position in the state. So we have Judge Ann Edwards, who's doing amazing with her drug court. So do we have any questions about the drug court?
Any questions about drug court?
Yeah, recidivism rate.
So we're just about due, probably in 25, we're gonna do another study to see what we do about every 5 years, so. I couldn't tell you, and I can tell you.
If you would.
Sure, yeah, we have a year continuing here. People finish the drug program, but they're also on a year. We do see some of those folks relapse, sure, but we're able to provide them with that net to support them back up and get them into treatment. So I would say probably about.
Both the same as.
Absolutely.
And without drug court, you're looking at closer to 80% is the national statistic. I can't tell you that's the local statistic. That's the national statistic of recidivism for drug related. And that's a lousy way to put it. It's drug driven offenses. I don't want people to think it's just, they got arrested because they had heroin on their possession. It's they're arrested because of the crimes they're committing to support their habit. So the majority of the rearrests on a nationwide basis are for property crimes or violent crimes, like robbery and those kinds of things, to support their habit. It's not you're rearresting somebody because they're in possessions.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Ray, that saves money all the way around, correct? To the fact that if you didn't have this drug court, then they're gonna be taking up jail space, correct? Can you elaborate a little bit?
Sure, it did carry over the years, and the drug court team has created a level of sanctions that time in the jail when you're in drug court is like the last of the sanctions. There's a number of other sanctions. Gary can tell you. Let me just start by saying, no one who's involved in drug court, almost no one, takes every step forward. There's a time when there's a step backwards. They miss a meeting, they violate, they stay out past curfew, they have a dirty urine. It does happen. But this court, because of the maturity of the court, doesn't jump to say, you violated, you're in jail, you're serving your original sentence. There's a modicum of sanctions that go in place that prevent, and what I would consider, or what would nationally be considered, an overreaction to not taking every step forward. And I think that the strength of our drug court, because of the number of years that it's gone on, the strength comes from the fact of the confidence of utilizing these sanctions as opposed to incarceration, or in some cases reincarceration. And I think that's been really something that's developed with the drug court team, that's led by Carrie and our drug court team. Unless I'm wrong anywhere there, Carrie, and if I am, please.
Oh, right on, right on. We really tried to time the sanction with the behavior. So if someone's late for curfew, kick back their curfew time. If someone misses group, we have people write apology letters to their peers because everyone else is there. So tell them why you're not there. If they're rooting for it, you have to write an apology letter to the judge. Community services, work programs. We really try to, those proximals, distables, things we expect from different people. We've certainly learned how to measure success differently in our programs. And I think it's taught us all a lot. And, the county attorney's office, public defenders, everybody's a part of that team, and they really buy into it.
And I think you'd find that our 70 or 72 to 75 people that are involved in drug court is more than every other county's drug court combined. And of course, because now through the, thank God, wisdom of the legislature, you're funding 85% of our drug court operations. So thank you for that. And thank you for the continuation. That's well appreciated.
Well, they made, not my money.
Well, I understand, but I mean, you as the legislators make the vote.
Right.
The program.
We appreciate it, sir.
Any questions? Any other questions? No questions?
Last one, 6106, transitional housing. Again, this is down a little bit in the budget. This is a program that resides next to the jail across the street. We can house up to 20 male and 10 female. We're full at most given times. We've sort of scaled back a little bit cautious around COVID. Saying that, we've not turned anyone away. We triage people that come in. It's a feeder program for people who are being released from the jail, people coming into our programs, drug court, mental health court, bail supervision. It's provides people with 2 meals a day, and in return, after they get employment in 30 days, they pay us 30% of their income. They're expected to do community service if they're not working. We are helping them with transition plans, case management, resumes, all of the skills-based activities.
The theory is if we didn't have it, they would just be on the streets.
Yeah.
And the only thing that they're probably reasonably good at is breaking the law and using, and so, we teach them the alternate skills and continue to, support the skills that they've learned through drug court, as well as through the only program in New England, as far as we know, that happens in the House of Correction for programs that Chris will talk about, which is, it's not exactly drug court, but it's in the house, in the walls, direct program, which we'll talk about when it comes to the jail budget.
I think it's much needed. Yeah. kind of like the military. One of them have to fight, just keep it on the street.
Any questions?
Thank you very much.
Five impressions.
My friend Amy.
Most for last. Good morning. My name is Chris Brackett. I'm the superintendent of the Stratford County Department of Corrections. I suspect that you've had an opportunity to take a look at the budget that has been presented in front of you. Just to start out, some of the things that I'm contending with, and I touched on this briefly, is staffing shortages. Staffing shortages is something that is not it's not something that only I suffer from. It's happening throughout the state, and with my colleagues at the superintendent's affiliates, we are experiencing the same thing. We're all trying to pull from the same pool, and it's exceptionally challenging to find somebody that is a qualified candidate that you would feel as though should be watching the inmates that are in our Stratford. I'm funded for 48 line staff. That's 48 correctional officers to work the staff. Right now, I have 37, one of which is a new hire. I'm hopeful that in 2 weeks, I'll have 40. I have 3 in the pipeline to come in, so that we'll be deficient 8 spots. A couple of specific items that I'm sure you've taken of note is I've had an increase in overtime. That increase in overtime is something that I just have to budget. When I first started doing this, my overtime line item was at $37,000. It's grown tremendously, and as a result of that, to try to have a better portrayal or anticipation of that overtime, we have planned accordingly. Education and rehabilitation of inmates is another item that has gone up considerably. To kind of piggyback on the programs that we do inside within this county, inside my facility, the second bullet point of my mission statement is to provide a range of correctional programs necessary to meet both the society and the individual. So taking into consideration the individual, but how they can successfully integrate back into society. Since I've been appointed to the position of superintendent, there's been a steady increase of programming and education. Our previous budgets would certainly reflect that. Right now, it's still only 2.34% of my overall budget. I'm continuing to increase that, but that increase, it was 1.78 last year and 1.65 the year before. That's the way that we're going to stop having people come in and be incarcerated. We've incarcerated people for years and years and years, and having those individuals come in and we just kind of keep them there for 8 months or a year, and then they go back out without providing them any education and programming. We're doing a disservice not only to the individual that's incarcerated, but to those individuals that will have interaction with them when they are released from custody. Another increase that you'll see is food. Everybody has seen the increase in food as it relates to inflation. I have budgeted $2.75 per meal because of the purchasing in bulk, and I've also increased my anticipation of our average daily population up to 350. For quarter 3 in 2023, it was 315. It dropped slightly in quarter 4 to 310, but as of this morning, our average daily population this year for the first quarter is 319. And as I kind of alluded to, I'm anticipating an additional 25 paying customers to come in over the next week. Those are some of the highlights that I'd like to talk about. If there's anything else, I'm more than happy to answer some of those questions, but those are some of the things that I suspect probably had some type of response.
So there is, as he mentions, over $600,000 anticipated extra revenue, which you see on the last page. So yes, it's going up, but there is some offsetting.
Any questions?
You know,
I do.
I understand your explanation of being short-staffed, This happened back a few years ago. And raised the salaries. Pretty good. And now it's hitting that time to raising salaries and being, or is it simply bodies not out there to be had? A famous statement a few years ago. No one's little kids that might go up and be corrections officer.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I knew the question was coming. I am a staunch advocate to increase pay for corrections officers. The problem is that I'm basically kind of chasing a ghost, and what that means is that if I raise the salaries, my competing counties, Rockingham, Merrimack, Carroll County, York County, Cumberland County, those they see that and then they react to it, and that's exactly what happened. We took the initiative to raise the salaries of the individuals that were working inside the walls. And I was very appreciative of that. And that put us from ranked 7th of the 10 counties up to the 1st. And then it was Belknap County that raised their salaries, and then it was a cascading effect. Now, I don't really compete with Belknap County because it's a relatively long distance to travel. But Carroll County did it, Rockingham County has done it. And so, we go in and we have meaningful discussions when we go into contract negotiations, but we also try to take into consideration that the county, in recognizing that we might have staffing issues, so doesn't the sheriff's department, and so might the county attorney's office. And so if I were to go in and say, listen, I think it's important that we give everybody a $6 raise in the Department of Corrections, I think that would do wonders for me. But that's gonna represent perhaps a slight, and I'm inferring this, to the county attorney or to the sheriff, because they're gonna say, well, what about us? Our operation's pretty important as well. And so we always try to go into those negotiations, trying to make it so that it's measured progress, and so that it is not so outlandish as to make some of my colleagues feel as though they're being overlooked. And that's the general approach that we have in negotiations. I talk frequently with Mr. Bauer about this, but I would love to give them. I just want to make sure that in doing so, we're doing it fair and equitable across.
My concern space, that would be last raise.
You're right.
But
You're right. At least not identified.
and I just, we still have that concern, some of them were substantial. Something that. Or prisoner. We don't want to happen in the first place. So, I mean, it doesn't sound like there's an easy solution.
You're absolutely right. There is no easy solution. But I can tell you that perhaps maybe might ease some of that concern is that we cap the overtime that somebody can work. And in times in which we have seen exceptionally large amounts of overtime, almost happens in this vacation. We have mandated our command staff. It's not subject to that overtime that they have to work in as well, and that starts with me all the way down. We've enjoyed assistance from the sheriff's department, from community corrections, from transitional housing, all of those entities to come over and provide that assistance, because I share that same concern, and I think that it's important to recognize that while we have the staff and we have cut down our operational process to be as efficient as it can, with 13 operating on first shift, 14 operating on second shift, 12 operating on third shift. We have done so, and I'm thankful that I get to operate the facility that I have, because when it was designed for staff as opposed to, it was cost-effective design, but it was designed cell by cell to ensure that our staffing numbers could remain as low as they can be, because that's where your costs come from periods of years, is through the operational costs related to staffing. So I share your concern. I would love to tell you that next year I'm going to come in and say, hey, what are we going to talk about? Because I don't have this. I just project that, that staffing will be a perennial concern because it's a fantastic field to work in, and we see progress happen every single day when you look. If you seek out, you see the progress that's made. You know, Mr. Bauer spoke about one of the only programs in New England. We've had federal benches from Maine, Vermont, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, public defenders, U.S. attorneys, all come in and do tours of our facility and watch some of the programs that we're doing. Those programs have truly a positive impact on individuals that go through our facility. And it's a shame that they're not in other facilities. The reason why they operate inside our facilities is because there's a vision that comes from the top down. There's an authorization that comes from the individual sitting at the table that says, you guys are doing right. And there's enough transparency that if there's ever a question, we're made available to answer those questions. And I think that a lot of that success has to come from vision that comes from the top down and the willingness to kind of invest our resources into that. We just happen to be able to get a little bit on the back end.
So, a few years ago, based on some jail, I guess they started some kind of treatment.
Bristol County, Brenda Smith.
And then they struck jails were responsible. Is that still ongoing? I assume so. How?
So this morning I counted. We have 45 people. 45 people that have through medical oversight have determined that the best way for them to address an opiate addiction is through. Now that doesn't work for everybody. Methadone, Suboxone, Subutex, all of those kinds of things. And it has been largely successful. Some people are incarcerated, but there are some people who utilize Suboxone or Subutex as a drug choice. And so for that reason, it's important for us to have different tracks of treatment. The program that we had all the federal interest in was our therapeutic community, and that's an abstinence use program. And so we have two different, recovery is different for every single person. And some people can do it, quitting cold turkey and not having any programming and just say, I'm not going to do it. My dad did that with cigarettes. He said it hurt when I was 4 years old. It hurt my nose. He put a cigarette out and said, I'll never smoke. But there are other people that might hear that and say, I'm not going to smoke. Son, there are different ways in which you address an addiction. And for the county to be willing to recognize that that's the case allows for us to be more successful. Now it comes with an operational cost, but that operational cost is largely minimal. That's rolled into the 218 education line item, which is only 2.3% of our operation. So we continue to provide medication assisted treatment. If someone comes in and they're not on it and they meet with an ex-waivered professional who can prescribe that, they can get enrolled on that. They don't. In fact, New Hampshire RSA statutes say that we have to interview them to see if they want to be.
Any further questions?
Could I just mention one thing in relation to that? The opioid trust fund, when they settled the Johnson & Johnson case, the difference between the settlement with Johnson & Johnson and other opioid distributors is Johnson & Johnson paid all at one time. So the opioid trust fund that was established by you all through the legislature, we're about to receive $1.4 million that for the funding of our MAT program from 2020 to 2022. So it's a back payment that we've talked to the executive committee about during executive committee meetings. That's probably Diane's been working on that. Probably in the next couple of months, we'll actually receive the dollars. They've approved all of our backup, relation You know, we can't just say, oh, it's 1.4 million. We have to submit all the backup. They've approved, we just got an email yesterday that they've approved all our backup, and now it's just a matter of cutting us the check. So, yes, it is a cost, and we do hope that the opioid trust fund is going to continue to fund MAT. Although we don't know that, we just know that they make an announcement when they feel there's enough money in their treasury, which is 85% of the settlement. And they make an announcement. This time, the first round, they didn't give any governmental entities anything. The second round, when the pot got bolstered by the Johnson & Johnson settlement, they set aside $10 million for the 23 entities that had filed separately from the state, of which the counties were 10 of those 23 entities, as well as the larger cities. And about $9 million was distributed, of which to those who applied from those 23 entities, Stratford County, I think, got the one largest award of the $1.4 million, because we've been doing MAT from the beginning of the corridor.
Thanks. Representative Petrie.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You said you was 8 people short. What was it last year? And what's the difference between what you're being and what your lab says?
So last year I was funded at 54 line staff, so we've cut that down. And honestly, I've done that because if I can't get to 48, I can't get to 54. And so the cost savings basically comes from obviously salaries, but it carries salary roll-ups, unemployment insurance, health insurance, those types of things. Last year, I was kind of in the same boat. I think I might have actually been a little bit worse. I might have been efficient around 14 officers when I came here and I talked to you about that. And we have an ebb and flow of qualified candidates that come in. We've changed our hiring process to reflect a chance for them to come in and work for 4 hours and see what it's like. Because working inside a correctional facility is nothing like watching Locked Up on MSNBC. It really isn't. There's a lot of downtime. There's a tremendous amount of downtime, and you have to be able to keep yourself busy. And some people can't do that, and especially if you're going to be assigned to third shift, which is almost a guarantee that you'll be assigned to third shift because of the way in which the bidding process happens. And so we try to expose them to that, so they know every single thing that they can. You know, the exciting part about working in corrections is when there's a Now, it's not as exciting to me as it once was because I've gained some maturity. I've got a few years under my belt now working there. I'd much rather see things calm and quiet so that everybody is safe. But new people coming in, they get excited about that stuff. And so when they see that it's not all like that, sometimes they say this is, or we do a close evaluation process to determine whether or not we make the decision that it's not really for them. Undue familiarity with individuals, not being able to toe the line, and keeping a rigid expectation of how people are supposed to act, or being able to not just rely on the disciplinary process, but be able to have an effective human interaction with somebody and say, like, why are you acting this way? This is counterproductive. Like, this is going to be reported to the judge that's making a determination as to whether or not you should get out. And if you can't follow rules inside the correctional facility, why would anybody jump to the conclusion that you can follow rules when you're outside of a correctional facility? So I guess it's kind of a long-winded answer to tell you that I'm in a little bit better position, but I can't say that I'm where I'm.
And the difference in money.
The difference in money, well, I've asked for an additional $300,000 in overtime this year. And that's just because I can't guarantee that I'm going to be able to fill those 8 positions. The difference in money is about 3.5% on a salary line item, because that's what was realized in an increase in compensation to those salary positions. But it's largely cut down some because
cut some positions.
Right, where you cut some positions, but you still have that extra money that you budgeted, that you're not using.
Yes.
And okay, the overtime's gonna eat up some of that.
Yep.
But you're still gonna have some laps.
Yep.
Or some money. How much is that? That's what I'm getting. Approximately.
I'll be honest with you. I don't know if I have an answer for you. I can certainly go and see what I can, see how I can look at those numbers to see what was left over related to that. But unfortunately, I have to tell you that I'm not prepared to answer the question.
Yeah, let me just add that, this is becoming a common practice for cities and towns across the state of New Hampshire and probably elsewhere. And an example is that Somersworth has 6 officers that they need, and they can't get them. They've been trying for 2.5 years. So now you come to a tight budget season, and the chief says, I'm gonna cut 3 officers out to actually save money or add money, or save money to the budget. It's unfortunate. It's just a comment that's.
Just one more question. Just, you know, so if you're staffing, let's just say you have 8 positions not filled. So are those 8 positions in the budget? So you could fill them?
They are.
So as long as they're not filled, does that money then go towards some of the overtime budget? Or is that just 2 separate, where does the money go? I guess?
It would stay there. It's 2 separate items, but honestly speaking, there was a time in the last few years when if we could hire to 54, you know, which is what our goal would be. And we were at, even though we're budgeted for 48, I would tell Chris to hire 54 simply because we'd save that money out of overtime.
But my question is, at the end, let's say you've got 48 positions.
Yeah.
In it, and at the end of the year, you've got 45 filled.
Yeah.
So there's 3 positions that weren't filled all year. Where does that money go?
It would sit there, you know, in the bottom line, and then ultimately it would be combined with the bottom line of the entire county budget.
So it's not used to supplement overtime. They're 2 separate.
Yes, sir, they're 2 separate line items. They're 2 separate line items.
That is.
Any other questions? Any questions? We're moving on to, agent, jail and county water.
I can cover laundry. Yeah, so Jail Industries, as you know, I suspect you know, Jail Industries is a program that we operate inside the facility. It involves the laundry, and basically what it is an opportunity for individuals to learn a trade while they're inside the facility, which they can then utilize once they're discharged from our facility in various different places. One of our larger contracts is with Stonewall Kitchen out of Rochester. If you've ever received a gift basket that has soaps and perhaps maybe a Christmas tree ornament, it was probably packaged at the Department of Corrections. So it's contract work. They can either learn how to do line work, they can learn how to solder, they can learn how to operate industrial laundry equipment. And then they in turn, when they're discharged from our facility, have an opportunity to go to general linen in some sport if they want. Or they can work, because we have a silk screening process, they can work at one of the various places in the area that they could carry that trade. And so, so that's the Jail Industries program. We actually hold one of the first licenses that was issued out of Congress in Washington, D.C. for us to be able to do that. Keep in mind that all of this work is vetted by the employment securities to ensure that no American workers would be displaced because of this work, meaning that all the work would probably be done overseas if it wasn't done inside the Department of Corrections. So that's the Jail Industries program snapshot. If there's specific questions.
It actually makes a small profit for the county. Besides teaching the useful skills, the county keeps the percentage of because the inmates that work in industries need to make a marketable wage that's set by Department of Unemployment Security. I don't think that's what they call themselves anymore, but it's that concept. I think they could call themselves something positive. But in any case, they set the wage for that. We keep a portion of that wage to offset the operational costs of the program. The inmate keeps the balance and can only use a small portion of that for
Phone calls or commissary.
phone calls or commissary. The majority of the money we force them to keep in an account so that when they're released, they have first and last month's rent. They have they have money to live someplace. And the other reason, or the other thing that we allow them to do is pay unpaid fines. When I was no offense, guys, when I was a cop a whole lifetime ago, we used to hold warrants for people till they got out of jail so we could rearrest them and put them back in jail because they hadn't paid their fines. I mean, but there's a whole evolution of thought. I was a police officer before any of you guys were. So that's actually what we, that was the philosophy. And that's of course, that's garbage. I mean, we want people to walk out with a driver's license, with a free and clear of we help them get their license back if they don't have it. They pay their fines, they pay restitution, and they have money for the opportunity to live, so that the only thing that they know how to do before going to jail is commit a crime to live. They don't have any excuse for that. They have other options that they've earned through this. And the county makes a little bit of money from it. Our goal is to break even, but lately, because there's so few workers at Stonewall Kitchen and other places, they just keep dumping work to us, which again is a proof that we're not displacing any local workers.
So now we know Ray's even older than we thought.
Yes. Wait a minute, Ray's probably the oldest person in this room.
They pay for telephone calls?
Where you're
They have
at.
cell phones?
Well, no, I'm not. Probably other than, I'm 70. Or I'll be, you're beating. I'll be 70 in a few months. I'll be 70 in a few months.
Younger. All right. Any further questions? Well, I thank all the departments for coming and posing their budget. And I've actually looked at the budget and like always, I think that they do a wonderful job in due diligence on what they need for capital funding. And I personally don't see anywhere where we're gonna take a big knife and cut the budget, but I'm gonna open it up to committee and get your thoughts.
I'm ready to make a motion
Motion, go ahead.
to accept the budget and send it forward.
So we have a motion to accept the budget and send it forward. Do I have a second? Have a second?
That includes the 32,006 salaries.
Yeah, that'll be right in your
This
committee.
motion is what I'm saying.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So you want that to be in the motion?
Yeah, that we don't get into this motion.
Right.
No,
That's fine.
so.
Comment on that is I remember there was some type of situation, Ray, and help me out, last year with this. There was some floating $30,000 somewhere, and we actually put it towards the county attorney office also, right?
No, it went towards the jail.
Okay, okay.
But this time it'll be the county attorney.
Okay.
I think, with all due respect to Tom Velarde,
Right,
I think that Emily has been much more on top of the issue of retention and doing the legwork that's necessary to support what she's been asking, what she's been asking for.
I just want to make sure that this motion that we actually passed the budget includes that money.
Yeah. And my commitment to resolve that in front of the is the revenue subcommittee.
So we have a motion on the floor to accept the budget. Second, we have a second, and we also want to include the additional money. Do we have any further comment? 32.5.
32 even.
No comment. I'm gonna, all in favor of the motion for accepting the budget, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? It passes. Like that, thank you.
Thank you.
I say so. Make sure. Thank you. I have to agree, I have to agree for the 8 years, I can't, it's just a fine machine, actually.
I think one of the differences is between us and other counties is we are one county. We are not the jail, the county attorney, the sheriff's department. And we don't compete with each other, we complement each other.
It's a team.
It's a team.
Yes. We have a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.